What's up? What's up? What's up? What's good? What's great? What's grand? Welcome to Carbon Ether Podcast where knowledge meets understanding. I'm Christine's son, the astute Sharif Prescott. Man, let me tell you guys something. It's a pleasure to be back. I know we've been hitting and missing. Got a lot going on between school, changing careers again, and whatever else may be happening right now. It's a little rough and a little frustrating for myself, but hey, here we are. I just want to let you guys know that under the current administration, things are rough. Things are looking really bland. It's a lot of chaos going on in the world right now. But we got to stand steadfast and push through it. You know, we have to persevere. It's a little hot in here. I had to cut the AC off so you wouldn't hear all that noise. But boy, it's hot as hell in here. Got a player sweating. But anyways, today I want to talk to you guys about education and how it's turned to make us look as if we're nothing, if we're less, that we can't hold a candle to a certain demographic. This isn't true, as you know, if you know melanated history, I know a good bit of it, not everything, but a lot of it, then you would understand that when it comes to inventions, we are unmatched. Regardless of what anybody says, give us the platform, the same playing field, and even without the platform and the same playing field, we still are innovative. We have done great things. But that's not what we're talking about today. I did want to point that out, that we are brilliant, we are beautiful, and we are on top of the world right now. And don't go out in those streets and get caught up in the chaos. They're waiting on us to get in the streets because, you know, they're always blaming criminal activity on us, but it's not us. Again, I've gotten off subject, but I can't help it with all the you know, when you're studying, researching the things that's going on like I do, you see so much. You read a lot, you hear a lot. You're comparing and contrasting information from one platform to another, from one news outlet to another news outlet. And it's just, yes, it's overwhelming. So I can see why many people don't like to deal with politics. But we must understand the politics of this country help shape, it's what shapes our lives. And if we don't pay attention, then some of us will be shaped out. And we'll find ourselves on a field or plane that we don't want to be on. We'll be left out of everything. People like myself, coming from a people who's been left out of everything, who's been pushed away from things intentionally. Institutions put in place to keep us out of things. And that's what we're going to be talking about, like the IQ, the quotient equivalence test, which wasn't designed for people that look like me. This is not Sharif saying it, it's history. So there's nothing wrong with us melanated people. I want you guys to know that. But things did happen to us. I once heard Dr. Philippe Jacques Matthews say that, and that stuck with me, and it's with me today as I prepare myself to go into this information to share with you guys. Again, we're talking about the IQ test and eugenics, how they go hand in glove. I just want to stress one more time, we are a brilliant people. We need to act like it. We need to stop doing some of the things that we do in the streets. I know I used to be out there. I used to do them too. So I'm not innocent. But it clicked. I got it. We have to start building. We have to start building ourselves mentally, emotionally. Let's get away from toxic masculinity. That right there is a bunch of mess. We shouldn't deal with that in no shape, form, no fashion. Let's get away from we're ashamed to tell our significant others how much we love them in front of our friends, show them affection and what have you. Some of us may be a little bit rusty. Some of us may never really get there, but we have to let our significant others know that we love them, and we can express these feelings in front of our children so they can see that growing up, so it resonates with them, so they don't grow up to be toxic men themselves by watching us. I know I bounced around, but like I said, we're going to be talking about the IQ test and how that and eugenics go hand in glove. And without further ado, let's get started. IQ test was developed and implemented in social and political contexts that assume intellectual hierarchy, because early tests Designers often held eugenics or racist views, and because tests reflected cultural and language assumptions of the dominant group. Test results were then used to track, segregate, and deny educational opportunities to black and non-white children, both in the U.S. and in former British colonies, with long measurable harms. I hope you heard what I said. As I stated, it's talking about how the IQ test wasn't created for anybody who wasn't white, whether it was here in the U.S. or over in Britain. So when the U.S. got a hold of it, it took a totally different turn. America was built on slavery, regardless of what anybody says. We know that to be true, which is why they're trying to erase the history from some of the museums around the country, or all the museums. He talk about history in its original context. It's important that they do that because they want to be seen as this great people. And I'm talking about those who are in power right now. They're not a great people. They're proving that while they're in office, the things that they're doing. Look at what's happening to the Latino community. It's a terrible thing, but we're not here to talk about that. I've got to quit jumping off track. I can't help it. I get excited and emotional and upset, and I have to juggle all these emotions that I go through. Again, as we continue talking about the IQ test and eugenics, origins in eugenics and biased assumptions. Early intelligent testing, Binet, Stanford, and Binet, was adopted in historical moments when eugenics ideas were mainstream among many social scientists in the U.S. and Europe. Test developers and prominent psychologists, some openly eugenicists, treated intelligence as an innate measurable hierarchy which sets the stage for racialized interpretations of scores and differences. That intellectual framing made tests a tool for policy, not just for measurement. What they mean by policy, they're going to make it policy that, hey, they ain't got it. No matter how well you test, you don't have it. It becomes part of policy, how they're going to measure someone's intellect. And we know to be called smart is relative, because it is relative. If you don't know what it means, it's important that you go look that up, meaning relative when it comes to intelligence. Let's go to mass administration, U.S. Army, Alpha Beta, and misinterpretation. World War I, Army testing exposed how culturally loaded tests could undercount the abilities of people who lack the test markers, language, schooling, or cultural background. Scholars, including Stephen J. Gould, documented how administrative conditions and biased items produce misleading conclusions about groups and their capacities. The military and later educational uses treated those scores as objective evidence rather than evidence shaped by context. I'm going to continue on. School placement and tracking, and special education misclassification. IQ type tests were used to place children into remedial classes, separate tracks, or special education programs, mentally retarded or subnormal classes. Because tests often echoed white middle class language and experiences, black children was disproportionately placed in lower tracks and segregated schools, which reduced access to curriculum, resources, and future opportunity. Activists and researchers showed how this produced a cycle: poor schooling, lower scores, placements in inferior programs. This IQ test and eugenics going hand in glove, and I shall continue. Legal policy pushback and some protections. Some court cases studies challenged these practices. Notably in the U.S., lawsuits and research demonstrated that IQ test was misused and overrepresented African American children in special education. In California and elsewhere, legal actions restricted or prohibited the use of specific IQ tests for black children placement because of cultural biases and discriminatory effects. Anything in the world to keep our youth down. Like I said, as I quote Dr. Philippe Jacques Matthews, there's nothing wrong with us. Something happened to us. But I'll say things, many, various different things happened to us. And I shall continue. International examples that Dubston schools, the Dustbin School scandal of the UK. The same pattern appeared in Britain. Culturally biased assessments led to a disproportionate number of Caribbean heritage children being labeled educationally subnormal and sent to segregated inferior schools. A scandal exposed by activists and journalists It was a scandal exposed by activists and journalists later. This demonstrated that it wasn't just a U.S. problem, but a broader consequence of applying culturally specific tests to diverse populations. Anybody who ain't white ain't gonna get the right equivalence IQ test, and if you do score high enough, they're still gonna say that you didn't. I mean, it's crazy, man. As I continue to read, concrete harms to melanated children: early labeling, stigma, being labeled subnormal or put on the wrong track, reduced curriculum, lowered expectations, and segregated placements that curtailed academic growth and future opportunities, overrepresentation in institutional settings, special education segregated schools that carried lifelong economic and social penalties, policy justification for exclusionary practices, school segregation, immigration, restrictions, sterilization policies in the eugenics era. Sterilization. And 99% of the time, you didn't even know you were sterilized. Now, we're not talking about, what's his name, who created this whole Eugenics thing of sterilization, where they would pay you to allow them to sterilize you because you was the group of people that they didn't want to be seen in public, and they damn sure didn't want you having any more kids because everybody is, abnormally on a not so smart level. But this is America and Europe, but I'm talking about America because this is where we are. So as I continue, let me find my place. Okay. Let me go back here, and here we are. Why did the test produce biased results? Many items require cultural knowledge, vocabulary, or schooling that the child may not have had. Test norms were often based on white middle-class samples, so a normal score reflected that background. That's what it means when it says that if I'm a child and I'm having issues and I go see a psychologist or a psychiatrist, you need to go see a psychiatrist. Not saying that going to see a psychiatrist that don't look like you won't work, because I did go sit with a psychologist for a while to get my mental straight, because I was a very angry person at one point in time, and it worked. But sometimes it's best to get a psychiatrist or a psychologist that look like the kids, so it's a better representation and they better understand, because of the cultural norm between the two, which is what they were saying, how they set up the IQ test. They set it up to favor white kids, and the black kids didn't pick up on it, or the Latino kids or what have you, is because it wasn't designed for them. And sometimes when it comes to mental health, the research isn't designed based off us. It's based off the demographic who's doing the research, which is primarily European or white people. And this is not to be ugly. It can be Asian also, but you have to factor in, if you're going to do a study and you're going to have a statistical understanding based on numbers of people that you've tested or ran tests on or interviewed or talked to or whatever the case may be, then it have to be if it's 700 white kids, and you need to have 700 black kids and 700 Latinos and 700 Asians, and then 700 of blah 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 blah, in order to really understand the psyche of the people, especially children. As I continue, what changed and what remained? Legal and scientific critiques since the 1960s through the 1970s forced reforms and careful test construction, use of multiple measures, and court rulings limiting specific uses. The court stepped in finally. The Coleman Report and later scholarships shifted attention to opportunity and resources as drivers of score gaps. But disparity still showed up. in testing and tracking as they do today. And many scholars argue that standardized testing continues to reproduce inequality unless its cultural and contextual limits are heeded, as I stated just a moment ago. Oh, excuse me, everybody. And like I said, this is never about being ugly, being bigoted, or prejudiced. This is about us going back. The only way we're really going to understand what's happening now, this has been happening. It ain't like it's new. They're just blatant with it. Yeah, they're creating policies through executive orders. Antifa now is a terrorist group by executive order, when it just means that you're anti-fascist. But, anyways, as I keep it moving, again, this is an IQ, how the IQ test hurt melanated kids and any other children that wasn't white. So, as I continue, if you want primary documents or a short reading list, go look at this stuff. Remember some of the names that I mentioned, and like Larry P. Rouse in literature. Go look that up. I got some more sources that I'll give to you guys at the end, but you have to understand where we are. Let's see. So as we continue, let me go down here, and we're going to talk about eugenics for a minute. Eugenics provided the ideology. IQ test provided the tool. Eugenics, late 19th through early 20th century, claimed that intelligence and worth were hereditary and could be measured, ranked, and bred for or against a people. It's hereditary. Man, but we ain't even gonna worry about the pseudo, because we know how the pseudo has harmed certain demographics of people. The IQ test came along in early 1900s, Stanford Binet, and instead of being used as Binet intended to help struggling students, eugenics seized upon it as an objective measure of innate ability. Margaret Sanger and friends, and it goes a little bit deeper than just Margaret Sanger. So, as I continue, together they formed a unilateral pipeline, meaning meaning Binet and Stanford. Together they formed a unilateral pipeline of ideology, measurement, justification for action. And how did it go? So let's say the function of control, not discovery. These tools were not used to discover hidden talents in oppressed communities. Instead, they functioned to confirm pre-existing hierarchies. The results were framed to show black, indigenous, immigrant, and poor children as less intelligent, while white, middle, upper class children were framed as the norm. I'm not adding to or taking away from the research and the notes that I've taken. I'm not adding to or taking away. I'm reading it verbatim. And in this way, the functionality meant that the tests weren't neutral. It was a unilateral mechanism of classification downward, not upward mobility. So when they was doing these tests and the comparison and contrasting, it was really pushing things down, because you can't just think that white people are just the only smart people on the planet. That is so beyond like ridiculous pseudoscience, and it's ridiculous. It's just they want to be, at that time, the way people was thinking, it is what it was what it was. And unfortunately, we had a young gentleman in his early 30s whose life was lost, but he spoke this way as well. He said some terrible things about the likes of Kamala Harris, Michelle Obama, Joy Reid, and so forth, Jasmine Crockett. These are what they call elite school graduates, not what he would call affirmative action or DEI hires or students or whatever. Totally not true. You had to have the academic capacity to get to where these ladies are from the institutions that they went to and they successfully graduated from. Again, there's nothing wrong to us, but a lot of things, there's nothing wrong with us, but a lot of things happen to us. And the moment we can realize that institutions were put in place to keep us down here on the bottom on a downward trot, then maybe we'll start to think different. Maybe we'll start seeing ourselves as a Dr. Cornel West, as a Joy Reid, as a Barack Obama, as a Malcolm X who was uneducated. I think he said he dropped out in like the 6th grade and came to be one of the greatest debaters on the planet. As a James Baldwin, a Sada Shakur who just passed, may she rest amongst the ancestors. But, these are brilliant people who was ostracized simply for fighting for equality. When we look at Jasmine Crockett, and she's been called ghetto and so forth here lately. Why? It's our culture, body language, tone, pitches, that's our body language, it's our culture. Because you don't understand it don't mean that it's ugly. Jasmine Crockett is stupid brilliant. And I mean stupid brilliant, like, what I'm saying, in the way we say things. You dig what I'm saying? But anyways, I'll keep it moving. I love all those women. I admire them all. And by the way, melanated women have the highest, are the most educated women in the country. Hands down, bar none, not me saying it, the facts say it. And if you don't like what I'm saying, hey man, go do your Google research yourself or call whomever you want to call, but it's the truth. So as we continue to go on, I may end up saying something, repeating something, but hey, I'm just trying to get you the information. And I hope you understand what I'm saying clearly. Policy application exclusion, not exclusion. Immigration IQ results were used to justify closing the door on immigrants from Southern, Eastern Europe, Africa, Asia, and the Caribbean. Unfit population. Boy. Education. Melanated children were placed into special education or subnormal tracks at disproportionate rates, limiting opportunities. As we go, again, we're going to talk about sterilization, eugenics laws in the U.S. backed by IQ scores. They're going to sterilize you based on the fact that they done created this false equivalence test to say that you are like below normal, might be retarded, might be dyslexic or whatever, but you are the undesirable, so you'll be sterilized. Well, you can't make this stuff up. This is America. Sterilization, eugenics laws in the U.S. backed by IQ scores justified forced sterilization of black women, Puerto Rican women, indigenous women, poor whites deemed feeble-minded. If you was poor white and you was deemed feeble-minded, this happened to you too. I'm just reading what the research gave me. This is a terrible thing. We better get past looking at one another based on skin tone. If we don't get past that, I'm telling you guys, hands made tell, here we come. Divergent, insurgent, Hunger Games. If we don't get past the buffoonery of so-called colorism, which was created in the 1700s through the Americanization Act. Go look at the black codes. Man, you guys better get up on game. If you're an adult, man, y'all might need to tune away from entertainment for a while and focus on trying to get your knowledge up, because you got to teach your kids, and your kids are hopefully in turn going to teach the grandkids. We got to do something different. That's all I'm saying. I know I have. I changed my lifestyle from being what I used to be to I'm going to dedicate my life to trying to share information, uplift the community in all communities if possible. Motivational speaking is my thing. Helping others is my thing. And I'm going to speak truth to power no matter what the current politics are. I just don't live with that. I don't live with the fear inside myself, so I'm not going to be quiet. I'm going to speak truth to power. So as we continue on, segregation, IQ results were cited as scientific proof that racial segregation in schools was necessary. You can't go to this school because you're black. You can't drink out this water fountain because you're black. You can't come through the front door because you're black. You can't ride on the front of the bus because you're black. We can't give you this job because you're black. and I'll continue forward. Every outcome flowed one way, and it was towards exclusion, limitation, and control of targeted groups. Targets, just like now. We're targets. We're always the target. What's happening to inside the Latino community is absolutely, there are no words for how terrible that is. What's happening? What's happening in across the waters is absolutely terrible. There's no reason for it. But once they're done doing what they're doing here in the United States to the Latinos and whomever else, they're getting rid of whatever with some of the most horrible things I wouldn't think I would ever see in my lifetime. We're next. And for you poor whites, or if you ain't got a certain dollar amount or of a certain class group, and then y'all, play with it if you want to. This is truth. This is truth. I'm speaking. I'm not making these things up. If you get past identity politics and you go and do your own independent research, buy your own books, you talk to people outside of these spaces that identify as Republican, Democrat, and what have you. If you do your own independent research, look at some of these things I talk about on this platform, on this show, and you'll see it for yourself. No one will have to tell you because you will actually see it. This is where we keep having a disconnect because cognitive dissonance keeps us from looking at things that's going to truly matter, that may change our mindset. Or we're afraid that our peers are going to look at us extremely different and have something ugly to say about, oh, you've changed, you went over there to the other side, you're a liberal now, or and you may feel like you may be attacked or whatever. Can't live in fear. If we don't do something different, we're going to perish, and it's going to be hard. And these children who don't deserve any of this, they need better. And that better start with us adults. And if you're able to read and comprehend and think critically, and you do nothing, you're part of the problem. And I'll keep it moving. Every outcome flowed away. Dang, I'm sorry, y'all. Excuse me. Every outcome flowed one way toward exclusion, limitation, and control of targeted groups. The illusion of neutrality, never any. Eugenics gave the rational. We must protect the gene pool. Stephen Miller at Mr. Kirk's funeral or whatever it was they televised last week. Go back and listen to what that man is saying. It's coded language. It is coded language. This is what he's talking about, protecting the gene pool. Nobody else create but them. We have to keep this a natural. Man, y'all better go pay attention, man. I'm just saying. Okay, IQ gave the appearance of science. We have numbers to prove it. I don't know what I just said there, but that wasn't right. We'll skip on past that. But the IQ test and eugenics, together they work unilaterally to reinforce white supremacy. One justified the other, and both moved toward the same political end, preserving racial hierarchy. This is history, not Sharif, and I shall continue. Unilateral, no reciprocity. We ain't trading nothing now for equal value. We're all that matters. That's what white supremacy says. No reciprocity. There is no even. You give me this and it's worth this amount, and I trade it back to you for this amount. Blacks and white will never be equal according to a white supremacist. And I shall continue. No matter how bright the melanated child was, the system was not designed to lift them up. We don't care how smart you are, keep them on the bottom. High scores from black students, was dismissed as exceptions to the rule. Oh, you got one or two that can do it, but he really didn't mean it. It's a fluke. He lucked up, or attributed to environmental anomalies. I didn't say it. The history is saying it. This stuff is crazy. Okay, low scores from white children were explained away as a lack of effort, sickness, or temporary deficiency. In other words, if they're not sick and they're not trying, deficiency, they're missing some things. Intellectually, probably because the bloodline a little tainted. Maybe they're not eating well. Maybe the family's a little poor, and if we just get them some food and stuff, that hey, maybe we could pick them up and lift them up, pull himself up by his bootstraps. Not me saying it; it's just what they're saying. I did add my own little piece to it, and as we continue, the function was always unilateral to push melanated and marginalized children downward, never raise them upward. Again, as Dr. Philippe Jacques Matthews says, there's nothing wrong with us, something happened to us. As Sharif Prescott says, there is nothing wrong with us. A lot of things happen to us, and they're still happening. So we, as melanated parents, across the board, BIPOC, and if you are so-called white people who ain't up there with the elites, we have to band together collectively, mentally, and intellectually and start teaching our children, all the while teaching our children, teaching ourselves. We have to. That's the only way we're going to make it through this. Because if we don't, I'm telling you, we are going backwards. We've all heard the term history repeats itself. History repeats itself if you do not know it. Come on, people. Let's get it together. In essence, eugenics was the philosophy. IQ test was the weapon. Together they operated as a one-way street, always serving to reinforce hierarchy, never to dismantle it. That's why the guy who is no longer with us now, may he rest well in peace, he said it. He said it. Can't nobody stand up to them intellectually. Stephen Miller said it. Can't nobody stand up to them intellectually. They are the creators of everything. And we know that's a bleep to the bleep bleep lie. And I shall continue. We got to use out. So I'm gonna close it off right here. I'll give you some references, and I know I read through it pretty quick, but that's just to give you some reference points of what we got to do, man. We got to pay attention to these IQ tests. We know that brilliance is in every nation of people, regardless of what those who have recessive genes say. And I'm saying that in a derogatory way towards those who have derogatory things to say about everybody else. And before I close out, here are some references. Stephen Jay Gould, The Measurement of Man, 1981, revised in 1996. Ibrahim X. Kendi, stamped from the beginning, 2016. It explains the pseudoscience, including IQ testing, and how IQ testing was used to justify systemic racism. Dorothy Roberts, Killing the Black Boys, 1997, shows the eugenics IQ testing and forced sterilization of targeted black women. A lot of people always talking about references. I get that; those are your references. But I give references when I say the IQ test and eugenics go hand in glove. That was used together, like a ball and a bat, like ice to water. Take that and go research it for yourself. How did the IQ test and eugenics function together? That's a starting point for research. And from that right there, you'll just keep going and going and going and going and just continue to go back. So when I do shows, pay attention to some of the things I say, because you can pause the show and you can go and type in or whatever, speaking into your smart device based on something I said, if you pick the right thing, and then you can find the research yourself. We have a whole smart device in our hands at all times, and we're still walking around here don't know much of anything when we can be brilliant. But it's our choice. This right here was forced upon young children, no matter how bright they were, to be seen and deemed as unintelligent. By force, by policy, government assisting. Even after Brown v. Wade, it was the same thing. It's like, you know, we just can't get past the buffoonery. Let me read you this right here. Even after after Brown versus Board of Education, IQ tests became tools to keep segregation alive inside integrated schools. Black children were disproportionately tracked into low ability groups based on IQ scores, ensuring they received inferior instructions and fewer opportunities. I'll read it again. Even after Brown versus Board of Education, the IQ test became tools to keep segregation alive inside integrated schools. Black children were disproportionately tracked into low ability groups based on IQ scores, ensuring they received inferior instructions and fewer opportunities. This is amazing. The IQ test was harmful to melanated students because it was never designed as a neutral measure of intelligence. It was created within the context of eugenics and white supremacy. Early psychologists such as Alfred Bennett in France developed the test to identify children who required additional support in schools. However, when the test was imported to America, figures like Louis Terman and Henry Goddard distorted its purpose, using it as a supposed scientific method to rank racial groups. The test was written in a way that reflected white middle class culture, its language, its references, and problem solving styles. When melanated children, especially those from the different cultural and economic backgrounds, took the test, they were automatically judged as less intelligent, not because of their intellectual ability, not because of their actual ability, but because the test was measuring assimilation into white norms rather than universal intelligence. Y'all have a wonderful evening.